You don't have to worry. Her words are kind and impeccable, even though they echo a distant landslide. And she herself, grown up and stronger, stands confidently in front of him, giving him an omnisciently wise and blood-stained look, as if they were talking about something mundane and not about hunting slavers. This actually makes it much worse. But Kaz, on the contrary, frowns and answers, speaking deceptively calmly, as if instead of words, a loud crackling of a glacier cooling his body escapes from him. I'm not worried. He gets noticeably lost in sensations, chokes them to asphyxiation, and does not find the meaning of his lies beyond their depths. Kaz worries, and Inej recognizes his lies too well, and sometimes he is uncharacteristically afraid of how easily it makes his rocky armor crack and fall to the ground in gigantic bumps. The fact that, according to custom, he can only stand in front of her, saddled with the oppressive hypostasis of being suddenly freed from metaphorical networks and vulnerable in a non-Brecker way. Inez would just smile at him innocently at such moments, not realizing what she was doing to him. "You're not worried," she repeats, not artlessly, almost rolling the phrase on her tongue, but there's no mockery or sarcasm in her words. "You sound like my dad, Kaz. Did you conspire with each other while I wasn't looking?" "He made me promise to look after you. I'm just doing it," Kaz says with an exaggerated shrug. However, behind the roar of the foaming waves, he catches how the homemade armor is bursting at the seams again, how a bulky piece of a non-fundamental statue falls off and falls into the abyss of the sea, with the roar of a broken dam, treacherously exposing all his fears and worries, and he cannot even resist these ordeals. It's ridiculous to the point of all sorts of failures. He has dirty hands. This squalid little town trembles before him in primordial horror, but at the same time, he is the damned drowned man of his nightmares. No matter how much he climbs up, no matter how thoughtlessly he beats on the watery surface to a sweeping spray. But someone's hands covered with a scab of scars still catch him, pull him to the bottom. The fingers of the gloves turn into narrow-faced, blackening vipers that curl around the neck like a collar or a garrote and quiver with stingers. It's high time for him to learn how to pacify his agonizing heart and crush the pain with the heavy step of a patent leather shoe, so that the nasal nasty goodbye will rot away in the sun into smoking nothingness and deform into go on. It's high time for him to learn how to let go of Inej. It's high time to accept her sailing and fighting at sea as an integral part of their universe. After all, Kaz had risked her life more than once before and never tired himself with annoying arguments about morality. But the sea had already taken his brother away from him. Naive to drunken laughter, howling at the sly and exhausting hopelessness from him. It doesn't cost anything to take away Inej from the same sea. Inej is not much different from Geordie, only in that life still draws her into these fights without rules and generously hands daggers into hands that have not known the blood of others, honed specifically for the torture of the human body. She calls the sea her friend, the waves her companions, and Kaz thinks his spider doesn't know how to choose either friends or allies. Inej takes a step towards him. "My carriage is waiting for me," she casually announces, without raising her head or looking into his eyes. Her slender hands rise, reach out to him, and finding nothing else to do, adjust the lapels of her coat. "I'll write you a letter the next time I sail." For a moment, her black pupils sparkle with bright agates. Kaz notices this while squinting. The sunlight in the early morning is monstrously obstinate, blinding and bursting into the eyeball like a rough snake. "Your carriage has been waiting for you for almost half an hour." The words come out of him by themselves, as if they acquire flesh, blood, and arbitrariness. In such situations, it is worth saying that time is fleeting and he will wait for her, even if it takes many months. But Kaz, ashamed of the banality, remains silent, more sharply than expected, grabs Inej by her bony fingers when they try to smoothly slide over her open neck and squeezes. It's comical, to tell the truth. He gets used to turning bones to a loud crunch and crushing skulls, rather than ceremoniously gently holding someone's hands because, look, he can break like a brittle reed. Anyone else in her place would think that they were about to be left without a hand, and instead of a hand, a wet, red, ugly stub would hang. But Inej is too quick-witted and knows well what lies behind this touch. For her to stop facing the ultramarine sparkling desert of waves like a faithful companion, she needs a solid reason. Kaz doesn't have one and won't have one. They know that they will have to wait longer than usual for the departure from Ketterdam. Inej's fingers nimbly free themselves from his hand, while the nail, as if by chance, weightlessly draws a curved line on the skin. They know why. She stands up on her toes, reaches out to him, and kisses him lovingly on the cheek. Kaz, who has been painstakingly building his own restlessness bit by bit for years, does not have time to come to his senses from the abyss of dreams, nor to say something to her, even if it resembles an uncertain hoarse bleating, because Inej disappears as if she had not stood in front of him a second ago, like a ghost. Kazoo is 20, and he stands alone in the damp undergrowth and looks at the ship rocking on the mighty waves, embraced by the mottled sky. Kaz is 20 when he finally realizes that he does not trust the sea. When Jesper dejectedly looks around in search of a new victim, Wylan nervously bites the tip of a pencil that has retained traces of someone's teeth, and Nina, who was accidentally drawn into this scam just to visit them, asks, out of an ordinary desire to shake Kazoo's nerves, of course, if there is a menu in this establishment and if her favorites are served. Waffles, they act like they're just acquaintances. As partners, allies, the rest can only pretend that they firmly believe in this performance, because as soon as he closes the door to his room behind Inej, all his former sedateness instantly smolders. Kaz always longs for her promise-like touches, for her hot whisper in his ear, even if he carefully keeps silent, and this time she is absent from Ketterdam longer than usual. Professionalism leaves an empty sound. They break up at the end of February and don't see each other all spring. It's such a terrifyingly long time that Kaz breaks off the non-existent chain, hugs her convulsively, desperately, and kisses her unnaturally at first, feels how Inej responds to him, almost scratching his skin, clutches his shoulders, and is exposed to nervous kisses. He runs his palms along her neck, along her chin, presses his fingers along the chain of vertebrae and, fleeing nimbly from the grip of the nightmares that mocked him, he finally feels the whole correctly constructed world with every cell of his emaciated body. "Why is it taking so long, Inej?" Kaz asks this, not pejoratively, not offended or even displeased, after Leno stretches out on the couch and she settles on it like a weightless raven feather and gently wanders with her fingertips over the open area under her collarbones. And he sighs. This sigh sounds quiet, but for Kaz it is like the roar of water, which drives away the pointed branches of dead branches in a deadly stream. Unforeseen circumstances have happened. Inej replies coyly and immediately leans closer, clings to the kitten lost in an angry blizzard, and buries her face in its neck. But I'm glad to be here now. 3 months later, with you. He wants to say that he is glad that she is not miles away from him now, but with him. He wants to say that he is glad that she, so real and alive, like a ray of sunlight trustfully creeping across his palms, lies in his arms as if it were the safest place in the world. He silently wraps his arms around her waist and buries his face in her jet-black hair. There's no other way. He has long gotten used to thinking of himself as the totality of a good half of human vices. But in the present, Kaz is silent only because the pain is constantly looking at him through Inej's eyes. Sincere and cheerful, with a silvery laugh that rings in his ears with an eternal echo and reminds him in moments when she is not around that none of the experience is fiction. Kazoo will never become like that. Maybe that's why Inej is running so unrestrainedly, soaring through the land dotted with colorful geraniums into new, exciting, and remarkably stunning wilds, unshakably happy and resembling a small flame in the darkness of the night, while Kaz, harnessed by the burden of life, crawls after her, tearing her skin into bright blood and rotting meat, because in spite of himself, he needs this light and he longs for her enveloping soft warmth. Maybe that's why Inej will allow himself to serenely plunge into the pool with his head, so that it resembles a run up a steep cliff from which you can jump from a majestic waterfall to get lost in a swarm of spray, sparkling in the sunlight. He knows that in a scenario in which it is worth falling to your death, there will be no fall, because Kaz courageously catches her in flight and carries her away from the rocky abyss. She trusts her daggers, which are sharpened to the limit. She trusts Kazoo. Kaz is afraid of her trust. In May, I dreamed of the sea. Inej whispers incongruously into his neck, as if revealing her terrible secret. You said that the sea is your friend, your second home. Kaz deadpans, burying her fingers in the black hair covering her back. Why are you surprised that you see him in a dream? And he feels on the level of certain feelings, perhaps the same ones that tell him every time that she is somewhere nearby, as a morning smile fades on her. The sea that brings me to Ketterdam is calm and insinuating, like a good friend, and in my dream I saw a real storm. The waves are dark gray and violent. The wind is whistling so that you can no longer hear anything, as if nature is angry at something, and the ship is rocking as if it will break into pieces. A storm in a dream is a bad sign for the Sulians. A couple of days after I slept, we buried one of the sailors, who was so sick that before his death he could barely stand on his feet and coughed away birds for days. Don't you think it's just a coincidence? What is it? He asked thoughtfully, staring at the ceiling when it seems that someone's eyes, glinting maliciously in the darkness, will look at him from there. Maybe. But soon a seagull began to fly behind the ship, and then it settled down with us, as if in our native home. The Sulians believe that after death we resurrect in someone's body. We can become proud lions in the Shakonsk tundra. We can become free crows in the sky, or we can resurrect in the form of water or fire. It's unusual to drink water and think that you're drinking someone's soul with it, Kaz drawls without mockery or contempt, as if rolling rancid leaves on his tongue. You mean, after your death, your sailor became a seagull? As an option. Maybe he loved seagulls in his lifetime, so the saints gave him the will to become one of them. Someone becomes what they deserve. For example, a worm that can be crushed at any moment. This means that a person was a sinner, and someone can be whatever they want to be. I would become a geranium on your windowsill because it's already completely withered. Inej sits up, looks at the faded orange flowers, and Kaz almost grumbles for her to come back. By the way, why don't you change it? Kaz is staring at the floor until she sees him. I'll give it to the little merchant. He might want to make a herbarium. Inej, without looking at him, laughs softly. Or a wreath for Jess. Or a wreath for Jess. Kaz echoes dangerously, bordering on lifelessness, before leaning forward. He hugs her to him again and turns over so that now Inej lies impressively under him. He kisses her on the line of her jaw, kisses her deftly found and desperately humming pulse under her skin, kisses her lips that tremble in a half, smile while her arms wrap around a man's shoulders, and he himself, for the first time in the 5 years that they have been together, because he does not know when he will see her again, confesses in a whisper that he loves her. Her. Inej is 22. She is beautiful, like a mythical girl who escaped from the yellowed pages of a fantastic book, and for some reason she becomes the happiest in the whole world, precisely in his hands, steeped in someone else's blood, as if there could be no other way. Kazoo is 23, he gets gray hair too early and feels 40 years older, if not more, and he finds solace in life, which has become a burden, only in her direct shining gaze and trembling touches. Paradoxically, Inej still continues to love him devotedly. Kaz is 23, and he doesn't understand why. A woodpecker is constantly tapping on the spreading branches of a dense tree located near the harbor. It sounds like the rumble of heavy wheels on solid ground as Kaz strides across the shifting sand to the dock and covers her shoulders with his cape. Inez did not sleep well last night and did not react to him immediately, but at that hour, as her gaze rises, as her eyes squint from the light, and she herself wants to say something, he says earlier, "Keep it to yourself." Something is heard that treacherously breaks into caring. "It's too small for me anyway, but it's just right for you." Inej nods stupidly, wraps himself up tighter, and closing his eyes, buries his face in the cape. Kaz knows that she retains his scent, that the fabric contains reminders of slums, blood, and iridescent jade leaves, everything that will remind her of him. Kaz looks up. "Is your carriage waiting?" In fact, he doesn't want to ask this. He doesn't want her to sail away again and leave him with complete ignorance. And at the same time, salt and poison pouring into the furrow of open scars, concern that the sea will reveal its true identity and take off the mask of a friend. Her dark agate irises sparkle with gems, and her eyelids flutter like a tiny fan. "He's waiting," Inej says simply, "but they know they'll have to wait. As usual, because I need to talk to you, Kazoo. Despite all the stinking truths he has forged about icy cold tranquility, does not like how it sounds like a harbinger of dazzling white lightning in the once azure sky. But he keeps silent about it and gives her the right to continue. And she, looking at him, laughs briefly and without mockery. "Holy cow, you look like a kid accidentally called you Grandpa." "It feels very close," Kaz grunts with deliberate indifference, even though the tremor in his voice gives him away. "So what's so important that you want to tell me that the whole ship is waiting?" In response, a sigh, heavy and loud. "Do you remember how once I was absent from Kerch for 3 whole months?" Inej asks cautiously, resolutely fidgeting in place, which involuntarily reminds her of a little raven who has just woken up. "Next time, I might come even later." Kaz swears by the whole handful of Krug that he keeps in his safes, despite the annoying babble of conscience and all the carefully constructed aspects in his head that he can stoically endure any length of time without her. Everything inside twists painfully, and facial expressions show everything that he has to hide from her. The slave trade is flourishing. Inej hurries to report, glancing at the heated sands, indignant and eager to avenge herself and anyone suffering from someone else's lust. "I thought people would start to be afraid knowing who would fight against them, but no, there are only more of them. It's like an endless war. And are you ready to devote your whole life to this war, Inej?" She looks at him. Kaz immediately notices and sees that Inej has been trampled by the consequences of her own ideologies and adventures. She has almost disappeared in the heat of endless battles and forced bloodshed. But unlike him, she's still alive. "You've devoted years to avenge your brother," Inej remarks reasonably, and looks so grown, up, so smart, as if she's older than him, as if it's not him who has so much in his soul, but her. "Then why can't I dedicate my whole life to avenge myself and those who risk being in my place?" "Because I'm going to worry," he says for once, finding the courage to admit the simplest thing, which she understands without his ridiculous confessions. "Don't worry about it. Gezin, thanks, the advice couldn't be better. Then what am I supposed to do but sit in Ketterdam until I get old and wonder if the sea is tired of being your friend, and if you've encountered a stronger opponent along the way? Inej smiles at him. Her slender hand reaches out and gently rests on the palm of her hand, which is clutching the head of the cane, and he feels that it calms him down a little. Actually, I lied a little when I said that I would give my peaceful life to this war. I'm not eternal, and the slave trade won't disappear no matter how much I fight it, and it will still exist even after me. Her thumb twitches, gently stroking the white skin of his hand. I've taught Madhavi everything she needs to know to take over my position one day. The next trip to the sea will be my last. I mean, as soon as I get back, I'll stay with you, Kaz. Kaz thinks he's hearing that she's not telling him anything, and overly utopian dreams mercilessly turn into demiurges of the most violent auditory hallucinations over time. But Inej looks at him in such a way that the thorns of doubt instantly fall to the ground and make him believe. He looks at it in such a way that he understands. Everything is real, real. Kaz puts his hand, trembling and bony like a piece of a broken sharp branch, on hers and squeezes as if afraid to let go. When you get back, I'll propose to you. He watches the stunned look on her face, the disbelief in her eyes, and wonders if he's saying something unnecessary. Are you sure? Inej pauses to clear her throat when her throat and mouth dry up like a hot desert, and her tongue twists into a knot, and Kaz hears a slight hint of cunning slip into her words. Are you sure you're ready to spend the rest of your life with all my, peculiarities? Are you talking about your constant faith in saints and the Sulian sayings that I'm too used to live without? I'm ready, of course, if you get along with my shortcomings. Inej, so radiant and, again, alive, leans forward at the same time, hugs his waist while Kaz hugs her to him, lifts her off the ground as if she weighed nothing at all. And at that moment, when everything around her, the damn sea, business, slavers, seems so far away and unreal, he almost forgets himself and does not spin her in the air like a bride at a wedding. She laughs softly in his strong arms, and her laughter is like a beautiful song in his ears. Kaz is surprised. Not every girl will be happy with a marriage proposal from a criminal, and Inej looks like the whole world is being brought to her feet. She gently takes his face in her hands, warm from the sun in the cape, and bending down slightly, gently kisses his forehead. Consider that you've already received my I agree. Inej whispers fervently in his ear before he lowers her onto the loose mounds of sand, when suddenly, conspiratorially, as if forgetting something important, he continues. And here's another thing, Kaz. You need to find a more solemn and respectable form in order to propose to me. Kaz doesn't have time to answer her, because Inej is already rushing towards the ship like the most cheerful child and laughing without mockery, hearing, "I thought you liked my business suit," thrown behind him in the most fake displeasure. Although he, of course, realizes that he is wearing an old coat and a hat that it's time to change before the moth has eaten the first holes in it. Handing the wedding ring to the woman you love is truly a blatant move. Kazoo is 26, standing on the dock the same way he has countless times before, and for the first time he can say, even shout, that he is the happiest man in the world. In the months that they've been apart, Kazu manages to turn an insane 27, and for some reason he doesn't feel like such a hopelessly tired old man when he stands decorously on the dock and nervously adjusts the collar of his black jacket, or the bow tie that sits askew on him. The arrival time specified in the letter is running out. Inej is running late. He is so late that his eyes are no longer rippling from the glare of the sun, and the starry evening sky is imperceptibly opening like a molten amethyst above his head. For some reason, the sea is wild at this hour. The waves are furiously beating against the blunt rocks and breaking into myriads of dirty azure drops. Kazoo doesn't like it, but he forces himself to trust Inej and not his obsessive anxiety, which has been mercilessly ramming him for years. Soon her ship looms in the distance, bobbing through the raging waters. Gezin sees that he is about to fall on his side and break apart from the impact of the wave, and Kaz finds it strange. Inej knows how to work at the helm, but the ghost is somehow clumsily and absurdly controlled. But he soon realizes that the ghost is not controlled by Inej at all. There's a gang of Sulians on the deck, shouting loudly and having once been rescued by her. Kaz can't make anything out of this mess until the ghost swims close enough, and he himself, overcome by anxiety binding with bloody threads, is not allowed on the ship. "We're under attack!" one of them screams until his throat bursts. "A bunch of slavers!" They attacked the captain all at once. The captain was very badly wounded. Kaz's heart doesn't even throb painfully. It doesn't pound on his ribs trying to break them, but quickly sinks into his heels and freezes. "Aisha!" he screams a second before a timidly shrunken young Sulian woman appears in front of him, whom Inej once introduces to him as their doctor. How is she? Captain Gaffa fought alone against Seven, and it was a very difficult fight. "Will she survive?" Kaz asks more firmly than expected. Isha hesitates, childishly afraid to look into his eyes. For some reason, she keeps looking away, darting from side to side, and continues to hiss pitifully in terribly broken Kerch. She lost a lot of blood, and some internal organs are seriously damaged from stab wounds, so she doesn't... With a cane on the wooden floor of the deck, which makes the healer shudder and immediately look at him in fright, as if he sees death in front of him. "Will she survive?" he repeats, demanding to express the last word through his teeth. Isha, to his horror, shakes her head. No. Kaz no longer listens to anyone or anything, rushes to the cabin without even pushing anyone aside. Everyone knows what Inej means to him, so they don't dare to detain him or ask him not to disturb the dying captain. Along the way, he fiercely and familiarly curses everything. The universe, which has put such a stop to them, the slavers who attack her, the sea, which gets tired of being her friend and leads its new fellow travelers into a trap, himself, after all, for not tying her hand and foot at the time, so that she would no longer meddle in sea adventures. He moves toward the cabin with the agility and ponderousness of an enraged animal on the run. Kaz opens the heavy doors and immediately, once inside, closes them. All the sounds freeze behind the walls, but they also have ears, he thinks. "Inej," Kaz calls her in a half whisper, almost noiselessly pacing towards the bed. Lying on her side, she breaks free from the grip of a half-dream, looks at him as if she will exhale her last breath any minute, and Kaz sees how fatigue and frozen pain splash in her gaze. He sees how ungratefully Inej tramples this deceitfully noble deed. In what form the damned sea returns her to him. In the mutilated body, there is not a drop of the power of the sea ghost, about which his enemies composed odes, nor greatness, nor leadership dignity. She's like a piece of rags torn to shreds and thrown by the sea. In the end, flesh that has been torn by someone or something remains flesh, skin split open to flayed meat and crushed bones. Who better to know this than Kaz? Who did this? "What is it?" he asks, gently grabbing her small hand, cut into purple lines, bringing it to his lips, and hoping that she remembers at least their facial features. He will find everyone and wring their necks before the sea has a time to betray them. "It's not important anymore," Inej says hoarsely, weak from many wounds, speaking as if the blood freezes deep in her throat, settles in her lungs, and makes it difficult to breathe. "They're dead, that's it. Their bodies are being eaten by fish right now, and has Isha told you yet?" Kaz nods distantly, reaches out to her with trembling fingers and gently brushes away the hair stuck to her forehead. And suddenly, as in a burning delirium, a laugh escapes from Inej. Kaz is scared. He sees death thousands, millions, and billions of times, sees it in the ugliest forms, starting from the torn flesh favored by maggots and ending with sonorously disgusting bursting ulcers on the gnawed and gurgling acid skin. But this time, Kaz is really scared. It's scary that he has to let her go, to no one knows where. It's scary that he won't be able to follow her. Inej suddenly smiles at him, reaches out, and clumsily tries to run her battle-scarred knuckles over his face. But she doesn't reach out, and Kaz leans closer, allowing her to place her hand on his cheek, stroking his skin with her fingers. "You found the costume after all," she remarks mirthlessly. "I'm so sorry that it's all for nothing. Really, in this costume, they would meet a pretty bride and carry her by the hand to the altar, where they would make vows to each other that they might not keep, but they would not bury this bride in any way. Kazu, however, doesn't really care about the costume right now. I bought a ring." He straightens her fingers and dips his other hand into the inside pocket of his jacket. "Simple without stones. The way you like it. We're going to put it on you now. The ring, a golden hoop, simple and smooth, like a handful of warm pebbles, is fished out of a velvet maroon box and fits almost perfectly on her ring finger, as if it was originally created for her. Kaz knows that it will remain with Inej until the very end, until their universe is riddled with a host of earthly cracks by a gigantic asteroid that has fallen outside the sky. But Inej shakes his head. "The ring is worth a lot anyway. It won't fit a dead man." "It's yours," Kaz whispers firmly, not wanting to hear anything else, pressing her hand to her lips, which are twitching in unspoken pleas, and then carefully, still not letting go, lays her on the blood-stained bed. He reaches out to her, kisses her temple, and breathes heavily, as if he's going to drop dead with her right now, and thinks this scenario isn't so bad. "Yours, Inej. It was already yours the second I saw it." Kaz cherishes a phantom hope that she will survive. They have been living for years, as if every next day is their last, surviving like real canal rats and still standing smartly on the ground. But when he sinks down, when he buries himself in her shoulder, as a boy lost in this lonely world, he soon realizes, and he accepts, his infantilism. Inej still doesn't answer him, and she feels dead cold to the touch, like a corpse. Kazu is 27. He does not come to the funeral that displaced his wedding, but orders that the ring not be stripped off her. Kazu is 27, a few days later, when there is still a huge and invisible hole in the rib area, and they are trying to push him out of the musty riveting room into the office of the gambling house. Kaz succumbs to persuasion only when he is told that she would not want him to let himself go so far. He somehow swallows the venomously vile "she's gone anyway" and goes to the Raven Club in the same way that criminals usually go to their deathbed. Nothing changes in his absence. The room doesn't even get cobwebs. But for the first time, everything seems so alien and not his own, when in fact he spends a good part of his existence in this office. Look, even the crows have flocked. Kaz looks back at the birds huddled on the neighboring roof, genuinely not understanding where their nurse has gone, then at Jesper, who brings him here. It's really hard for him, too. The pain of losing a man who's practically becoming his younger sister is weighing heavily on him, but he's holding on to shaky legs for his sake. But Jesper, no matter how you look at it, has his own life, just as carefree and rosy, and he doesn't have to bury the last thing that remains of his humanity. Crows are like crows. Kaz shrugs indifferently. The birds that came here before that. Maybe, Jasper replies awkwardly, before suddenly brightening up. So you've been here before? What makes you think that? You have a geranium blooming on the windowsill. I thought you changed it. Kaz looks at him in a way that makes it very clear that he doesn't care at all. But then something clicks in him. The geranium is in bloom, his petals dried to pale and lazy. Falling on the windowsill are a scarlet geranium that should have been thrown away a few years ago, and Kaz frantically turns around, looks at the fiery red fluff of the flower, so blooming, so alive. "Jesper," he calls out on a heavy exhale. "Was someone in my office while I was sitting in the rivet?" "No, Kaz," Jasper says, as if it couldn't be any other way. "No one would dare. You would have wrung their necks." Kaz no longer listens to him or hears him. He walks unsteadily to the windowsill and does not understand why his hands are shaking so much as soon as he takes hold of a vase and takes such unnatural care for him to transfer the geranium to his desk. You never know. Another raven will slip through, or the wind will blow and throw the flowers on the lumpy paving stones. He will smash the vase into pieces and scatter the sanguine petals to the sides, leaving ugly bare stems on the ground. When the vase is on the table, he stands in front of it for a couple of seconds and then runs his palm over the geranium with a twitch for a moment, as if it were a person, and gently ruffles the red petals, as if it were someone's hair. "Kaz?" Jesper addresses him cautiously. Kazoo is 27. He hears the shooter's voice as if behind a dense wall, and, contemplating the bouquet, suddenly wheezes softly, as if the wind were whispering into the void of a night cradle. "Bring water, Jesper. We need to water the flowers."